Please welcome Jade Wexler, Associate Professor of Special Education and Dean's Impact Professor.
I'd like to introduce you to Sean.
The salmon is the state fish of Alaska. Salmon contain omega-3, considered by some to be a miracle ingredient. Omega-3 reportedly helps reduce the risk of heart attack. Many people consider salmon to be a delicious tasting fish as well. It is a popular choice on many restaurant menus, in grocery stores, and in fish markets.
Sean is an 8th grader in one of the schools that my research team is working with. And we asked Sean to read this short section of text and tell us the main idea of what he read. We were hoping that Sean would say something like salmon is a popular fish because of its nutrition and taste. Instead, Sean said salmon is the state of Alaska fish. Now, Sean could read the words, and he could identify that salmon was what the passage was about, but he could not identify the most important information about salmon in this short section of text. And unfortunately, Sean is not alone. You see, many students continue to struggle to read and understand text into the secondary grades. They struggle with understanding at the multi-paragraph level, the paragraph level, and some students even struggle to understand at the sentence level. In fact, every 2 years, we give a nationally representative sample of students a reading test to help us get the pulse of reading achievement across the nation. And in 2022, 69% of 8th graders could not perform at a proficient level. 69%. Think about a typical classroom in the school where your child goes to school, or where you are a teacher, or where you are an administrator. That means in a typical class of about 25 students, 17 of those students are still developing readers. Now, this clearly poses challenges for our teachers who are expected to continue to provide instruction so that all students acquire content knowledge, including students who are still struggling to understand text. So what do we know about improving reading achievement at the secondary level? Well, I have good news. We actually know a lot about what works. And one reliable source that we can turn to is the Institute of Education Sciences, the research branch of the US Department of Education. And in 2008, the Institute of Education Sciences released a practice guide that listed 5 recommendations for what we should see in terms of practices that are supported by strong or moderate evidence. I'm going to talk about 3 of them today. Number 1, we should be providing vocabulary instruction frequently so that students understand the meanings of words when they read text. We should also be providing students with comprehension building activities frequently, such as providing them with background knowledge before they read a text, or giving them strategy instruction on how to understand the main idea of what they're reading. And third, we need to be providing students with extended opportunities to engage in text-based discussion. In addition to these types of practices, we need to think about the delivery of instruction when we provide instruction on these practices. And we need teachers to be able to provide that instruction using what we call explicit instruction. What do I mean by that? I mean that teachers need to model for students and think aloud so that students understand the process that they go through, that we go through when we comprehend text. We need to engage students in these types of practices frequently with immediate corrective feedback from teachers and other peers. We often think about that I do, we do, you do sequence when we talk about explicit instruction. And instead, I want teachers to think about the I do, I'm going to model it, and then the we do, and then the we do, and then the we do. And then we're going to do it again. And that entire time, I'm collecting data to determine if these students are responding to my instruction. And if they are not, if they do not understand, I do not want to think, what is wrong with that kid? But instead, what is it about my instruction that I can adapt to meet the needs of these kids, go back and remodel that in a different way. When we asked Sean, what process did you go through to get the main idea of this short section of text? He said, I don't know. I mean, they always tell me to get the main idea, but nobody ever shows me. Like, how do you get the main idea? Sean needs explicit, evidence-based literacy instruction. So, we know that there are a lot of students who continue to struggle to read and understand text into the secondary grades. And we know a lot about what to do about it, how to improve reading achievement for these students. So where do we go from here? I have 2 recommendations that I want us to consider. Number 1, we have got to increase the dosage of literacy instruction that all students are getting throughout their day in the content area setting. This is extremely important for our struggling readers and our students with disabilities who spend a majority of their day in that setting. In fact, currently, we know that 62% of students with disabilities spend 80% of their day or more in the content area setting. So, if we think about it from the perspective of Sean, what we can think about is if Sean gets just 2 lessons a week in science that are infused with vocabulary and comprehension building practices, 2 lessons in social studies, 2 lessons in English, and 2 even in math, that's a really healthy dosage of literacy instruction, and it doesn't fall all on one teacher. Now, I am not here to say that this is easy. Teachers are busy. Teachers have a lot of pressure to cover a lot of curriculum at a swift pace. Many teachers were not prepared to be literacy teachers and might not identify with being a literacy teacher. They might say, I'm a science teacher, I'm not necessarily a literacy teacher. And many teachers are in buildings where they've adopted a lot of other initiatives. So they might be experiencing what we call initiative fatigue. They might put up their hands and say, I just can't take on one more thing. In other words, these teachers vary in their levels of skill and will when it comes to providing this type of instruction and increasing the dosage of literacy instruction that students are receiving. So this brings me to my second recommendation. We all need support. We've got to support our teachers, and I suggest that we support our teachers by leveraging instructional coaches. Just as athletes are coached and we provide them support, we can do the same thing for our teachers. And if we think about support in a multi-pronged type of way, we can think about the fact that if we expect teachers to provide support for our students and coaches to provide support for our teachers, then we also need to be providing support for our coaches. This is why my research team is currently developing and evaluating a coaching model to provide systematic guidance to coaches so that they can use skill and will data from teachers to differentiate their supportive teachers as they increase the dosage of literacy instruction that they are providing across a school-wide literacy model for these students. This is a picture of a University of Maryland huge victory. This team was coached, and we can do the same thing for our students. Next time I see a picture like this, I want it to be because we are celebrating the improved reading achievement of students across the state of Maryland and beyond. Thank you.